Hello, welcome to, I keep wanting to think of this as my December wrap up. It's my November wrap up. It is now December. As you guys know, some months, hello by the way, hi. I don't know how I'm in a weird headspace today. Hi, thank you for being here. Welcome. As you guys might know, if you've been here before, some months for me can be really long and other ones can go by very quickly, as I feel like it is for most of us. And November was a really long month. Like, I was looking at the first book that I read this month and it feels like I read it last year. Did I have to look up these plots again? Maybe. I have decided to keep in my DNFs because I've been trying to get better at putting down books when I'm just not feeling them. Even if I know that I like them in another headspace, I'm trying not to force myself through them, and I actually had a few this month, and so I'm going to add them in and tell you about them. But first, I want to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Book of the Month, as you guys know and love. Book of the Month is a service where a giant team of readers comb through all of the new releases. Maybe it's not a giant team, actually. I feel like Book of the Month is a small company. But anyway, a wonderful team of readers will narrow down from the new releases 5 or more of the best new releases from all different genres. They could be from authors that you know and love. This month, you can get your hands on Babel, just saying. Or they could be an author's debut. So really, really wonderful stuff. I'm going to talk about one book that I got from Book of the Month a couple months ago that I read this month that might be on my list of favorite books of the year. So anyway, they just started shipping now to Canada as well. So if you would like to get on that, my Canadian viewers, as a Book of the Month member, you can pay one low fixed price and pick your favorite books that you would like to get for that price. They're all going to be hardcover. Like I said, they're all new releases. And for December, they're having a really wonderful promotion where if you use the code WONDER, you will get your first Book of the Month book for $5. So like I said, they have Babel. They have a really cute looking Christmas themed romance. I just want to put that out there. The ones that I got The Light Pirate, which knowing my taste and my fears, I don't know why I picked this one. It follows many different people living in Florida dealing with climate change, a world that they want to stay in the place that they have known and loved, but nature is not really allowing that to happen, and just kind of what that forces them into. And then I forgot to show you, you always get a really cool box like this. And then the other one that I chose is The Circus Train, which is about a girl who was raised kind of in a traveling circus, and it takes place during World War II and like what that means for her and the people that she comes across, and how that changes her life living in Europe. And it seems really interesting. So once again, Wonder. That information will be in the description box. Thank you always to Book of the Month for supporting this channel. Love you very much. And yeah, we've got some Book of the Month books to talk about this month. Shall we dive in? Let's do it. I'm actually going to start with my DNFs because I'm going to be really quick with them. The first one that I picked up and did not finish is Wicked and Wild Things. I saw this on a random shelf when I was in New York, and it looked really interesting. And I did like it. It just didn't grab me enough where I kind of had other books that I wanted to read, and so I put it down. I will probably pick it up again later. It's about a girl living in a world where there is magic, but it's deemed as very bad. And to me, I think it's intentional. I'm pretty sure it's intentional, but it gives off Great Gatsby kind of vibes. Like, she goes to this island, but it feels very much like Long Island, like there's a West Egg and an East Egg. There was definitely a mention of like a light shining across the harbor, you know? So it feels like it takes place in the 1920s. It definitely talks about like prohibition and stuff like that, but it's all kind of tied to magic instead of alcohol. Or is it? It's kind of tied to alcohol. Anyway, I enjoyed the overall vibes, but it just kind of wasn't grabbing me. So I put that one down, but you can, if that sounds interesting to you, pick it up. I also put down Book of the Goose. I read like 75% of it. This was actually really interesting. It had a lot of really beautiful lines that I underlined. It is about a girl growing up in a small French village, and she ends up moving about. It was told in a very kind of stream of consciousness style. So like I said, there were a lot of really beautiful lines, but in terms of reading it, I tried the way that I read books. I like to read books kind of in one sitting or something. I think this would have been a lot better if I had tried to pace myself, but again, I just kind of had so many books coming in from the library at once. I felt like I was drowning, and yes, I know that I can put them off. I had already put them off. So yeah, I just kind of read, I got something beautiful out of it, but I didn't feel the need to see the story to the end. And then the last one I didn't finish, I'm actually kind of mad that I didn't finish it because the hold ran out, and I have other things that I need to do on my iPad. I can't turn off my Wi-Fi. So the library did snatch it from me, and it's called The Book Eaters. It wasn't necessarily good. I just wanted to like understand the world more. It's about a mother and son who are kind of on the run. They live in like just normal, I don't know if it's modern day, but it's definitely close to just like normal society. And there are these 6 families that live very much off the grid. It's just a kind of old wives' tale to like the normal folk. But these 6 families are either called book eaters or mind eaters. They were like created by some alien. This is where it kind of lost me. They are a group of people that were created by this alien that wanted to gain like human knowledge or something. So the book eaters, which are usually women who are very rare, the book eaters can just eat books and like absorb that knowledge. And then there's mind eaters who eat the minds of people and then absorb their knowledge, like absorb their memories and stuff like that. Obviously those people die or they're like brain dead or something. So we have our main girl who is a book eater, but she has a son who is a mind eater, and she runs away because she hates the system that she's in. Because the women are so rare, they are basically just like passed around like cattle in order to make as many babies as possible. They're in like marriages for 2 years, pop out as many kids as possible, and then they move to the next house. Like, it's grim. But she's trying to find this drug that helps her son not have to eat brains anymore. And it wasn't necessarily fantastic to read. I just really wanted to know, like, what the hell? Like, what's going... Because apparently the alien, like, abandoned them, and so they don't even have, like, a purpose in life. They just eat knowledge because they have to. I just wanted to know. So I might return to it just to see, like, what the hell. But, it's not one that I'm going to rush back to. I'm just a little frustrated that the library took it from me. Anyway, those are my DNFs. On to the books that I finished this month. First book that I finished, and this is the one that I feel like I read so long ago. I finally read Lonely Castle in the Mirror, and this was not at all what I expected it to be. I have seen this book posted so many times. Everybody loves it. You see the pink cover. I got a new cover. I don't know why. It was one of those books that I had heard so much about without actually knowing what it was about. It was quite interesting. I don't know how to explain it. If you've read a lot of like translated Japanese work, there's like this certain way, I think it's just the way that like Japanese as a language gets translated. There was this feeling of familiarity, even though I've never read any work by this author before. It follows this girl who has become more or less agoraphobic because she was like violently picked on in her middle school. And so she stopped going to school, and now she kind of has problems even leaving her house and everything. Until one day her mirror in her room starts glowing and she walks through it, and there's this weird little girl with a fox mask on, and like there's a castle, and it's literally a lonely castle in the mirror. Like I thought that, I didn't think that the title was going to be literal, but here we are. She ends up meeting a bunch of other kids, and they are tasked with finding all of these different keys so that they can enter. I forget if it's like they go through a door. They need to find something in this weird abandoned house. They can come in anytime they want to from like morning until 5 p.m. and then whoever finds this thing gets one wish granted. I don't want to spoil anything, so there's obviously much more to the plot. But overall, I enjoyed it. I think that it got a little long once you kind of understood everything that was happening. It got a little bit long, but overall I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how the characters interacted with each other. It wasn't like a a weird forced friendship. It definitely felt like middle school kids interacting with each other. And yeah, I could very easily see it be adapted into a film as well, which would be very interesting, I think. But overall, Lonely Castle in the Mirror was not a letdown. It wasn't like incredible, but it was definitely a great way to start my month. Next up, I read a book that I have been waiting for so long, which was The Drowned Woods. And this author had written a book that I've talked about many times before called The Bone Houses. And I really enjoyed The Bone Houses, so I was very excited, simply based on the cover. They had a similar vibe, right? So like I mentioned last month, I had picked up another one of their books just to simply bide my time before The Drowned Woods came out. It did not hit. It was a miss for me. It was a DNF. And this book as well was like slightly a miss, and I'm kind of sad. So the premise got me. It takes place in Wales-ish, heavily tied to Welsh mythology. Everybody's got a hella Welsh name, which I appreciated her not going easy on us, but like, woo. There's also a corgi character, and we'll talk about this in a second. But anyway, so it takes place kind of in like mythical Wales, where there were people who had many different kinds of magic that were all kind of tied to the elements, and the water diviners, I always get this wrong. The people who had water power are all gone. They've either been killed off or whatever, except for our main girl named Mare. And she was kind of like, in her childhood, she was a tool of the current reigning prince. And there's a war going on, so she was used in various ways to kind of help the war effort. And when she decided she absolutely did not want to be a part of that, she made herself disappear. She ran away. And that was going pretty well for her until her old, like the spy master basically, who's kind of like a father figure to her, shows up where she has been hiding out and is like, listen, I'm going to ask you one last favor. We're going to take this prince down. He basically has this huge plan for how they can possibly topple this monarch that is doing horrible things. They end up going on this adventure. They pick up people along the way, and some of the people they pick up for this adventure is a boy and his dog. And this dog was the only character I liked. You know how in Disney movies the main character always has like a cute animal sidekick? Like, that's exactly how she wrote this corgi, because it was like comedic relief, it was cute, blah blah blah. And I feel like there was so much attention put into writing this corgi that it made the rest of the plot feel very bland. I don't know how to explain it. The corgi both like made and ruined the book for me. Overall, I just didn't really connect with any of the characters. I think that the author, along with the corgi's owner, gets a lot of personality, but the main character is kind of always just this like closed off, hard, not very happy girl. And I'm all for, like, female characters don't have to be like funny or quirky or happy-go-lucky, but like for a main character to just be so like the whole book until kind of the end, it just made it hard for me to really get into the story and like root for these people, because they never really seemed to jive. So overall, I was let down, and that was one of my most anticipated reads. Yeah, a book about corgis, and it wasn't a 5-star for me, unfortunately. So that's The Drowned Woods. After that, I made a ton of reading vlogs, so I'm gonna be really quick with these books because I already kind of gave my opinions on them. If you would like, I will link kind of like my last couple videos. My reading vlogs tend to like not perform as well, so in case it never showed up in your recommended, they're there. But the next book that I read was Attribution, which I found on a new release table in a bookstore, and I just liked the cover. But Attribution is about a woman who is studying, I believe she's doing her PhD, but she's studying art, specifically the Spanish Baroque period. And one day, as she's doing kind of like tedious inventory work, like nothing really exciting, she stumbles upon a painting and she looks at it and she's like, that's that's by a master. Like, that's 100% a painting that should be in the museum. Why is it in this tiny little room? And she devotes her Christmas break to going to Spain and proving that this is a work of a Spanish Baroque master. It becomes like low-key thriller-esque. Like, it becomes very apparent that, like, first of all, she has to hide this because she technically stole this work and like took it internationally to run all these tests and stuff like that. So she's got to like hide the fact that she's doing this, but she also has to work with like all of these academics, and like academia in general is like a very competitive and scary thing in and of itself. And then she meets this weird guy on the train who like may or may not be royalty. It's weird, but overall I enjoyed it just as like I hadn't read a book like that in a while. It was very tied to just academia and where women stand in art history. It was quite slow. I don't want, like, when I say it's like thriller-esque, it wasn't. It was very slow, but I think if you're interested in that, like in Spanish history, in art history, in women in art, in academia, if that sets off any alarm bells, I thought it was very good. So that was Attribution. And next up was another huge letdown, and I'm so mad. I read The Cloisters, which sounded so good. It's about this girl who studies like Renaissance art, and she didn't get into any of the grad programs that she wanted to, so instead she decides to go to New York City and have an internship at the Met. But something happens where that internship doesn't exist anymore, and so she needs to go work for the Cloisters, which is another museum. It's tied to the Met, but it's another museum by itself in the woods up in like northern Manhattan, almost in the Bronx. It becomes very weird. It's supposed to be very dark academia. It ties into like tarot and the occult, and she's got these weird ass coworkers who like none of them seem normal, and she just kind of gets wrapped up in this world. And overall, I just really didn't like it. The main character was not interesting whatsoever. It didn't even really tie that much into tarot and the occult, which is what I was very interested in. It's sort of, the way that I described it in my reading vlog is like if you took If We Were Villains and you took all of the interesting Shakespeare stuff out of it, it was like that, where all the characters are very morally gray and you don't really know how you're supposed to feel about them, but then there's like this interesting mystery and incredible deep dive into Shakespeare in there. If you took all that juicy stuff out, that was The Cloisters. It was just like, it was a big bummer. It was a big bummer. And then to make me feel better, I reread Legendborn, and then I read Bloodmarked, which just came out. So Legendborn is allegedly gonna be a trilogy. So Tracy says. I'll believe it when I see it, okay? Legendborn and Bloodmarked follow a girl named Bree. She's in high school, but she's going to university through this like gifted and talented program, whatever. She's a genius. She goes with her friend and pretty immediately starts to see weird stuff. And by weird stuff, I mean demons. She gets kind of wrapped up in this very ancient, very secret society that ties back to King Arthur, and they're basically demon hunters. That's like the YA fantasy plot of it, but there's so much more. It talks so much about grief because she just lost her mother. It talks so much about racism because she's growing up in the South. She's a black teenager. And so much about history. Like, it's just, it takes place in modern day, but there's just so much. I could talk about it forever. I do talk about it forever if you watch my video. But basically, I loved Legendborn and I really enjoyed Bloodmarked. I think that as a second book in a series, it really did a great job. I love all the characters. Tracy's writing is amazing. Like, that's all I can say. I will talk your ear off about it if you want to know more over there. But yeah, basically, please read it. Okay? Thank you. After that, my life turned upside down and I read the Crave series, which it's basically, I don't want to call it a Twilight ripoff, but like it was heavily inspired by all of the vampire media that we were given in my middle school and high school era. It follows a girl who just lost her parents, and so she has to go live with her uncle, and her uncle is the headmaster of a school in Alaska. And when she gets there, she realizes all these students are really weird, and spoiler, not spoiler, they're all like paranormal beings. So we've got witches, we've got vampires, we've got everything. And that's all I can give you. It's a trip. For the first couple books, it was a good trip. As the series continued, it just got unreadable. So that was Crave. After that, I read the Kiss of Deception trilogy, and I read, what was it? Dance of Thieves and then Vow of Thieves. It's a duology. I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited. I read that and talked about it because a lot of you guys recommended it, and then I got all these comments being like, oh, well, didn't you know that that's kind of a sequel to this trilogy? Because I had mentioned like the world building, I felt a little bit lost in the beginning, and it's because you were supposed to technically have read this trilogy and understood the world to get into that one. Overall, if you just want to read the duology, I loved the duology without having any background, so you can do that. But Kiss of Deception was so good. This trilogy, I ate it up. I think I read it in like 3 days. Like if I could read a book a day, I think that's what I did. And similarly to the duology, I thought that the second book in the duology was so good, and the first book was like a YA fantasy, whatever. Same with this trilogy. The books get so much better. The Kiss of Deception, Heart of Betrayal, and Beauty of Darkness is about a princess growing up in a world where there are essentially 3 kingdoms, 2 of which are not really allies, but the third kingdom is trying to take over everything, and so if one of these 2 kingdoms fall, they both fall. So they're like trying to be allies even though they're kind of traditionally enemies. They decide, what's a great way to ally? Let's have a wedding. And so they take this princess, our main girl, and promise her to the prince of another land, and she's like, hell no. And she runs away on her wedding day. She gets the hell out of there. This is in split POV, so we also have a man who was hired by kingdom number 3, which is the one trying to take down everybody. He is hired as an assassin to make sure she's dead. And then we also, chasing her, have the prince who feels snubbed, who's like, who the hell is this girl? Like, I didn't want to marry her anyway, but like, she doesn't get to run away. I was gonna run away. She's stealing my thunder. And so he is also chasing after her just to like, basically just to see her face and be like, you know. She also ran away with her best friend / lady in waiting. So we have all of these characters kind of trying to hide who they are, trying to live in this world that's on the brink of war, if not already at war. I don't want to go into it too much, but I thought it was so good. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's a twist. Like, I feel like every book has some kind of like surprise element to it, or like a truth is revealed. So I don't think that's a spoiler at all, but there was one part of the story where a truth is revealed, there's a twist, whatever. And it was a thing that like I didn't have any hint that it was gonna happen. Normally when you're reading, you know, like if it's a thriller or whatever, like you expect a twist, but this, I thought I knew everything. And then I just didn't. And I actually got kind of mad, and I thought it kind of ruined the book. But then as I pushed through, I was like, oh no, it made the book. So I'll put a spoiler down below. Please don't check the spoiler. If you haven't read the book, don't do it. But I will pin a comment for those of you who have read it, because I was shocked. But yeah, definitely if you're looking for like a young adult fantasy, it's very light on the fantasy. I would hesitate to even call it a fantasy. Basically, there are some people who have this gift that's a little bit like seeing the future, but it's like, it doesn't feel very magical. So really, it's, if you don't like fantasy, like I think you would still enjoy this book. It was great. It was great. I loved all of the characters. I thought it was paced well, wonderful. I cried. The last book had me in tears. So yeah. So that kind of like restored my sanity after Crave. So thank you to, is it Mary Pearson? Thank you. After that, I picked up High Mountain Court. I had seen it everywhere. I think it's like a TikTok sensation. But it's apparently a really long series. I absolutely recommend reading this as a standalone. I don't care what happens in the rest of it. We're essentially in a fantasy world where there were all of these different courts, and within all these different courts there were all these different kinds of witches. There were red witches, brown witches, green witches, blue witches, and they all have a different kind of power. So green witches are like more like home and plant witches, and so they can make really wonderful food and like what, you know, stuff like that. Anyway, the king of the northern court is currently trying to take over the entire world, and he succeeded in taking over the high mountain court, where he killed all of the red witches and all of the royal like it was just a bloodbath. Our mean girl is a red witch, so she should not be alive anymore. And so she is in hiding. But of course, a handsome stranger walks into her bar and is like, I know what you are and I need your help. And we're going to take down the King of the North. And so she gets wrapped into this adventure. Overall, like it hit these kind of beats that a book of that type does. So it kind of, if you're especially, okay. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. What was it called? From Flesh and... From... This one, you know? The very smutty book. It became that very quickly. I would say the beginning was very much like ACOTAR book 1. And then the second half became very much like, I would say, A Court of Silver Flames, if you get what I'm saying. It became very smutty. It like checked the boxes. I enjoyed the characters. I think, you know, the smut kind of turned me off of it at the end, but overall I thought that it was fine for what it was. I felt like the main crisis was kind of tied up in a nice little bow, and if I continued, the plot would just get messy. So I would recommend reading this as a standalone and then feeling, you know, do you want to continue or not? That's what I got for you. High Mountain Court. Nothing special, but did the job. After that, I read a weird book. I also just saw Bones and All in theaters. So I read this book, and then I was also reading The Book Eaters, which has like brain eating, and then I watched Bones and All, which is vaguely about eating other people. And so I just feel like the end of my month was a choice that I made. So the next book that I read was Sin Eater. And I forget where I heard about this book, but I saw it, I think, on Bookstagram or something. And it is about a phenomenon that I didn't know about until I read this book. And basically in I would say like the medieval time period, there was such a thing as a sin eater. And so when you were about to die, you would confess your sins to this person who was like sworn to secrecy, basically never spoke unless they were talking to the sinner. They would make a list of like, if you lied, they would have to eat liver, and if you did this and this is after the person has passed away, the sin eaters would come back with that grocery list, sit down and just eat your sins. And so the symbolism was basically the sin eaters would absorb the sins of the dead person, and that dead person was forgiven and could easily go to heaven. The way that this was written, it very clearly takes place in the Tudor era. We have also the kind of talks of switching from the new religion to the old religion to the new religion. We have a virgin queen on the throne and this kind of power struggle and everything like that. We follow a girl who becomes a sin eater, and she ends up getting wrapped up in kind of a royal scandal. And overall, I didn't think it was that compelling. We're seeing everything unfold through the point of view of our main character. She's like an interesting character. I don't think I would have liked it to be more of a third person because it kind of got tiring, the way that she sees the world, the way that she thinks. Anyway, overall, I was just interested in the phenomenon in and of itself of sin eaters because it's a real thing. So once we got into like the political intrigue and the kind of royal scandal and all of this stuff, I actually wasn't super interested in it, but just overall it held my attention until the end simply because I thought that piece of history was so bizarre and I wanted to know more. So yeah, that was Sin Eater. I wouldn't rush to read it, but definitely if you're looking for a more historical fiction, kind of gruesome piece of history, give it a go. And then last but absolutely not least, oh my god, I have a physical, thank you, book of the month. I read As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, and oh my goodness, so I had this was book of the month for October. I knew that I wanted to read this, but like I said, I had so many books coming in from the library, blah, blah, blah. But my friend Susan recommended, she was like, no, you need to read this. And so I had been kind of looking at my screen for too long. I was feeling kind of vaguely, that cyber sickness or whatever. I just kind of wanted to give my eyes a break. So I was like, ooh, physical book recommended by Susan Lee. Wonderful. Let's do it. How do I start? This book takes place in Syria during the revolution, kind of very present day. It follows our main character, who is an 18-year-old girl who was studying to be a pharmacist. Within Syria, the dictatorship, in order to really try and quell this revolution, they specifically target doctors and hospitals in order to inflict the most harm, basically. And so now they have a severe lack of medical professionals, and so anybody who has any medical knowledge is suddenly being promoted into these really high ranks within the medical system. And so she just vaguely trained to be a pharmacist, but she's one of the head doctors at her hospital. This other guy has become the head of surgery. She's not trained for this, but she is having to stitch people up, things that no doctor is prepared to do, even the most seasoned doctor. Every single day she basically just wakes up, goes to the hospital, works until she emotionally and physically can't anymore, and drags herself back home. She's also looking after her sister-in-law, who also happened to be her childhood best friend, who is pregnant in Syria during the revolution, where they are specifically targeting children and women, and specifically pregnant women, to be shot by snipers. I mean, it's so grim. Her sister-in-law, Layla, obviously wants to leave, obviously wants to be in a safe place, not only for herself, but for her future child. And so they're also talking about getting a boat, leaving, crossing the Mediterranean. And so our main character is dealing with, first of all, is it even safe? You know how many people have died on those boats trying to make that crossing. Will she risk that for herself and for her sister and her future nephew? And second, can she leave Syria? This is her home. She feels like she's abandoning it. She's so important to the community, working in the hospital. Is that giving up on her country? Who will fight for Syria if everybody leaves Syria, right? So she's dealing with all of that. She's dealing with the death of her mother, the abduction and imprisonment and probable death of her brother and father. I mean, there's so much. She's also dealing with, good Lord, this girl. She's also dealing with kind of the personification of her PTSD. She's haunted by this man who shows up at night and basically just tells her, worst case scenario, here's all the horrible things that could possibly happen to you and your loved ones if you don't be perfect, if you don't make every right decision. So she's just going through it. It's just written so well. And then to top it all off, she meets a boy. And then that gets added into the equation of staying or leaving Syria. And it's just so good. And so many of the details in this book, it honestly, to me, because of my life experience, it reads like a fantasy. It does not feel like this is real. But so many of the things that are in here, things that happen to the people who come into her hospital, the attacks that happen, are based on real things that the dictatorship has done. It's so different. I said this in another video, but it's so different from reading about what's happening in a news article. This just I can't recommend it enough. It is so heavy in terms of just the emotional weight of loss, but then also it's very descriptive in terms of the people who come through those hospital doors and what they're suffering with, and it's almost always children. So definitely go into this book knowing that it is really heavy. I actually had a nightmare about this book. It's very rough to read, but It is so, I just think it's so important and it's so good. And literally my only complaint is that there was like one too many, and coming from me, one too many Studio Ghibli references. She is a huge Studio Ghibli fan, and I just think there was like one too many. And that's literally my only critique. This was like incredible. Definitely on my list of fave books of the year. It's YA. I believe she calls it halal romance, in terms of the main characters are very devoted to their Muslim faith. And it talks a lot about that. So there is romance, but it stays kind of true to their morals and religious beliefs and stuff like that. So just like overall, can't say enough about it. Also, she's an army, if you guys are interested. Her dream is to get Namjoon to read one of her books. If that happens, she will expire on the spot. Please go follow her on Instagram. I'll link her down below. She's hilarious on Instagram. So yeah, I just can't wait to read everything that she writes, and it was absolutely wonderful. So please try and get your hands on it as long as the lemon trees grow. And that's it. That's it. I don't know how I read this much this month. I think I just kind of had a lot of days of sitting at home only reading. I can't stress this enough, guys. This is my full-time job. So I literally just sit from morning until very late at night reading. So that's how I ate all these up, basically. But yeah, this was a very mixed bag of a month. I'm excited for December. I just started reading a book last night that I'm excited to talk to you guys about already. There's a new Adrienne Young book in the universe of Fable and Namesake. I'm so excited. It's already out. I literally have it on my iPad and I haven't read it yet, and I don't know what's wrong with me. But yeah, I'm overall looking forward to the end of the year, and I'll talk to you guys next time. So thank you again to Book of the Month. Once again, use the code WONDER to get your first book for $5. Please look at the list because they've got some really great books this month, and I will update you guys on the ones that I read when I read them. So yeah, thank you to Book of the Month. Thank you guys, as always, for being here. Let me know what you've been reading. And I feel a big reading slump coming on. That's kind of why I haven't picked up the new Adrienne Young book yet, because I'm just like not... I feel like I forced myself to read too much last month, and so now I'm like, I need to kind of give myself a break to kind of get that joy of reading back. But yeah, let me know what you're reading. And I also just got the Sunbearer Trials. I'm so excited. Like I said, it's going to be a good month. But overall, hope you guys are doing well. Thank you as always, and I will see you guys next time, okay?